good evening, everybody. How are you? Ooh, that mic is hot. More than not just, physically. Yeah, it's hot. Can we turn it? That'd be great. So I'm so excited to be here tonight. I'm honored to be here. As you said, I'm not in real estate. It's kind of ironic, though, that my father-in-law and ex-father-in-law had a lot of investments in real estate, and that's how they've been able to pass on legacies to their families. So, and I also grew up in Western Nebraska on the farm. So I guess that counts on real estate because I know someday I'm going to inherit some of that stuff. So anyway, I'm so excited to be here. It's good to see some friendly faces. I thought I'd do a little bit of housekeeping to get started. One is I'm kind of straightforward and blunt. Once in a while, unintentionally, I might throw a little cuss word. Is that okay with everybody? I'm also pretty, okay, good. I'm also a pretty strong woman of faith, so I use God a lot. So if you need to interpret that for something else, feel free to do that, but I'm not going to apologize for using God. Is that okay? All right, cool. Last thing is just for some housekeeping. I talked to Rhea quite a little bit about you guys, who you are, maybe some things might be beneficial to you. So I'm going to talk, and then I'm also going to have some time for questions. So if you have questions, just kind of make a note in your phone, just make a mental note, and then we'll do some questions at the end. Does that sound okay? So one of the first things that Rhea suggested is like, well, who am I? How did I get here? Where did I come from? Well, I grew up in Western Nebraska in the Panhandle. I kind of got started unintentionally as an entrepreneur and being kind of ambitious when my folks split up. Well, first of all, I was driving truck for my grandfather on the farm when I was young enough to drive wheat truck. And before that, I was helping grandmother with all the meals because that's what you do on the farm, right? And then my folks divorced, and so we moved into town from the ranch, and I wanted more clothes. And Mom says, I don't have enough money. And I said, if I get a job, can I have more clothes? And she said, yep, next day I had a job. And that's pretty much how I've been my whole life. I wanted to go to Girl Scout camp. She didn't have enough money for that. Whoever sold the most Girl Scout cookies got to go to camp for free. Guess who sold the most Girl Scout cookies? So there kind of started a trend that way. And one of the things, going through high school, they always ask you what you want to be. You talk to the guidance counselor, all those things. And I really, in my heart, wanted to be a teacher. But I really wanted to be a vocal music teacher. And I figured out that I wasn't really as good as I wanted to be, but I could also type 95 words a minute on an electric typewriter. Some of you aren't old enough to know about that, but that's really fast. Okay, 95 words a minute on electric typewriter is really, really fast. So I did that, but no one told me I wasn't going to make any money. And I didn't really want to go back to college. So I decided to get into sales because it was the only place that I figured out that a woman could make as much money as a man without a college degree. And it's still probably pretty true today, right? I wish they taught more about sales and entrepreneurship and a lot of those things in college because there's so many skill sets that aren't taught. And that's really how I created the business that I have today, which I hope I can share some of those stories. I've actually had 5 different major career moves in my life. And as I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, I thought, well, I've got a milestone birthday coming up in a couple weeks. I'm going to be turning 65. And I thought, what better time you kind of hit milestone birthdays than you kind of reflect, right? And I was reflecting on where I am at 65. And part of me one day went, man, I don't have tons of real estate. I don't have tons of money in the bank. But I have a treasure trove of experience and wisdom I've acquired over the years through making some stupid mistakes and also some very wise decisions. Anybody relate to that? Anybody else ever been there? And all the ones who raise their hands are older. That's how that works, right? That's how that works as we get a little bit older. So I did the sales job for quite a little bit for a corporate job. I went through the Denver economy when it tanked back in the late 80s. Again, some of you may know how to be old enough for that. Some of you may not be. But when I came back to Nebraska, I took a job selling radio advertising, selling air. Do you know how hard it is to sell air? It's not an easy thing to do. The first aha moment I really had about entrepreneurship, about really, other than my family, was I saw my boss that was there in the morning. He was the manager of the radio station. He was there when I got there in the morning, and he was still there when I went home at night. And I'm in my early 30s. The clock is ticking. I'm wanting to get married and have a family, and I'm looking at this and thinking, how is this life that he's living going to work with the life that I want to live? I don't want to be working 60, 70 hours a week and getting married and having kids. That wasn't my idea of what life should be like. So one of my radio station clients, I took her to lunch because she bought some radio advertising. We connected. So I took her to lunch, and one thing led to another. I'm sitting down talking to her mentor, and within about 24 to 48 hours, I signed up to be a Mary Kay beauty consultant. Anybody know anything about Mary Kay? I had never tried the product. I just said, if I can make that much money, I'll make myself like the stuff. If I have to do those damn parties to make money, I'll do it. It wasn't about the product. I saw a business opportunity that I could work and have a successful career, make 6 figures, and at the same time be at home with my kids. That was a perfect thing to me. Fast forward, I had a successful career with Mary Kay for 25 plus years. I earned a total of 14 company cars, was in the top 5% of the company. I started in Lincoln, moved to Kansas City when I met my kid's dad. We were there for 10 years, then moved to Washington State. Life fell apart out there, went through a really ugly 6-figure divorce, 6-figure attorney fee divorce that I'm still paying for. And that was in 2008 when everything crashed. You guys all know about that, right? So it was a double whammy. So I moved back here to Nebraska, and probably with my tail between my legs a little bit because things were difficult financially. It was a very ugly custody thing that I got blindsided, and I ended up moving to Nebraska with my 6-year-old and 10-year-old with their dad in Washington State. That was a really hard and embarrassing thing to do because what do people say? When you go out and meet people or network, so what do? Are you married? Are you not? Do you have kids? Yeah. Where do they go to school? Washington State. I didn't want to, it's a hard thing as a mom to admit that you don't have your kids. But sometimes you have to save yourself first, right? It was pretty passive, aggressively, emotionally controlling. And I knew if I didn't make a change and move home to Nebraska, which was what God told me to do, and I had to be obedient to that. If I didn't make a change, I was not going to do anything but change my address to a different house, but I was going to be under the same control I was before. Fast forward, 6 years ago, my son, who I didn't have much of a relationship with, moved back to Nebraska. And fast forward 3 years ago, my daughter graduated from high school, and both of my kids are here in Nebraska right now. Woohoo! That deserves a round of applause. But I worked really, really hard on that relationship, and I also worked really hard on me to get my self-confidence back and to get myself into that person because I was second-guessing myself all the time from that very difficult marriage. I found myself struggling financially, so here came the next career move, is that I was resigned from Mary Kay as a director. I still stayed a consultant. I saw some other network marketing companies starting up, and in a fraction of the time, like instead of 25 years and 2.5 months, they were making as much money as I was. And I was just real pissed that they were making that much money after all this time I had invested. And I was sucking wind financially when it came to all the travels out to Washington State, paying child support, paying for the divorce, paying rent. You can imagine, right? So I tried a couple of those other companies, and I did what my mentors told me to do. I've always been about working hard. We're taught in the Midwest to work hard, right? How many of you all agree that we're all taught to work hard? I worked hard. I was making 60 cold calls a day to try to build this network marketing business, and it wasn't working. And I had pretty good skill set. I had pretty good people skills. I mean, I built a team of over 300 women when I was with Mary Kay. So I just decided it was just maybe time to take a break. I'd had some people suggest that I take a job. I really didn't want to take a job. And part of it was I couldn't imagine working for someone else after being self-employed for over 25 years. But also probably part of it was pride. I had this I was this successful Mary Kay lady. And personal life fell apart. It was pride. Well, my mom and stepdad retired down at Harlan County Reservoir. Anybody know where that is, south of Kearney on the Kansas-Nebraska border? They retired down there. So I decided I was just going to take my daughter, who was there for the summer, and we're just going to go camp out at my mom's for the month of July. And I learned something very, very valuable that served me now for the last 7 to 8 years. And this is where I hope that my hope and prayer, every time I do a talk like this, I just say a prayer that somehow whatever I say serves someone and someone can take home with a nugget. I type up notes, but guess what? I've already put my phone down, right? Because it's in my way. I just kind of go where I just feel like I'm led to be talking. And I grew up so much all those prior years in Mary Kay and winning all those cars and being in what they call unit clubs, which means our team did between $300,000 and $550,000 for like 20 years in a row. That's a lot of lipstick. That's that's a lot of cleanser. That's a lot of mascara, right? People used to say, man, you must have sold a lot of stuff to get those pink Cadillacs. No, it's about leadership. But I've always been about that work ethic because I said earlier, if I wanted something, I went out to get it. And haven't we all been taught so much about working hard? Well, I was working hard in network marketing. It wasn't working. It wasn't working. I had to do something. I had come close to them repossessing my car. I was lucky I had a roof over my head. And I've always thought of myself as a pretty grateful person, but I've always looking for that next thing. And what's the next thing? Anybody else relate to that at all? We're looking for the next deal, the next thing, the next opportunity, the next success or whatever. So I went to my mom's and I just got this inspiration. Her place is just my happy place. It's just nice and quiet down there at Republican City. No neighbors really around her because she's an only full-timer around her. Everybody else is just weekend people or whatever, okay? So she and my daughter would sleep in, and I would get up every morning, and I took a spiral notebook, just the ones that kids take to school, the spiral with 25 lines on it. And I took that spiral notebook, and every single morning from the 1st of July until the 31st of July, every single day, I wrote down 25 things I was grateful for. It wasn't easy coming up with 25 things every single day. Did they repeat? Yes. But it went something sometimes as simple as I have 10 fingers and 10 toes. I hear the birds singing. The sky's not falling. Anything that I could come up with to get my 25 there, okay? So towards the end of July, I had a phone conversation with a friend of mine up in Omaha. And she was checking in with me, see how I was doing. And she just said, why don't you, girl, part of the other thing about taking a job was, I'm 50 something, who's gonna hire me? Because, sometimes age is a thing, right? She goes, girl, you have got too much sales experience, just get on Indeed or something and get a job. So I applied for a job with a credit card processing company. I did one interview and they hired me on the spot. So very quickly, within about 4 or 5 days, my daughter and I packed up, left my mom's and came back to Lincoln and I started that job. And they trained me. Now, here's the thing, is I was in this direct sales, network marketing, doing stuff I'd been doing for 25 plus, probably closer to 27, 28 years at that point, okay? I knew how to do that. Then they come over and they hire me to do this job with credit card processing that was business to business. Over here was business to consumer. They did set appointments for me. The hard part was they were in Chicago and they were setting them for Lincoln and surrounding towns. So imagine Wahoo, Wilbur, Seward. You get the idea where I was going all over the place. But I started selling right away. And this was a company that they wanted you to one call close. And so I had to build a relationship really, really quickly and one call close them because that was really how I was paid. $150 every time I closed somebody. At the end of 30 days, I had closed like 20 or 25 accounts. I'm like the star salesperson and I'm selling like crazy in an industry I didn't know anything about. How the heck did I do this over here, not knowing anything, when over here, I couldn't do anything? Anybody have any ideas? Over here, I was desperate. Or as one of my friends would say, desperate AF, okay? I was really desperate AF. Really, really desperate. I moved over here and I was selling something I didn't know anything about, but those 31 days, I shifted my energy. I shifted my energy from desperation to gratitude. And that has totally pivoted and changed the way I do business and the way that I do things now. Has anybody else been desperate before? You feel like you're hitting the wall, you just try and try and try and you can't make anything happen? And I had learned this over the course of the days when, if I couldn't, I was hitting a goal, trying to win a Cadillac, trying to wrap up a trip, I'd try to make it happen. Anybody ever said, I'm gonna make it happen, I'm gonna work it, I'm gonna make it happen? The more I tried to make it happen, the more it put out like this desperate energy. And it was like taking your garden hose and putting a kink in it. The water stopped flowing. And I think what I really want, I am so passionate about having businesses win and having families win. And I'll get into a little bit about why I do what I do. But so much of what I believe and why I want that to be good is because we're taught so much to work 50, 60 hours a week, whatever it takes to be successful. But there's a lot of price that gets paid for us mentally, physically, our relationships. And what if you could accomplish as much as you are now or more without working harder? Would you be up for that? Would that be a good thing? No one talks about frequency. No one talks about energy. No one talks about, and that exists. You can walk into a room and tell whether it's electric and a good vibe, or you can walk into your house and know if you're in trouble or not. Right? You're getting that energy. Well, the same thing happens when you're in a room full of people. The same thing happens when you're going and calling on people. You're putting out a vibe and an energy, and whatever you're putting out is what people are feeling. It's usually going to come right back to you. So I learned pretty quickly, and actually I learned a lot of this in my Mary Kay days, but it really put it into action, that the more I thought about stuff and the more I talked about it and the more I just kept visualizing on it, the more it started happening. I learned about setting goal posters and doing all that stuff in my Mary Kay days. I remember one of the first prizes I won was there was a full-length mink coat that I could earn. It was the most beautiful mink coat I'd ever seen in my life. And I put it on a goal poster and they had it on a brochure. And I said, well, they said, you have to visualize and see yourself where you're at. So I went and found a picture that had my head about this big, and I pasted it on top of the lady on the mink coat. And I visualized getting on the airplane in Dallas, Texas, when we had convention, getting on the airplane in July with a mink coat and all the looks I was going to get. And guess what? I got the looks because I got that coat, all right? Where I'm going is we underestimate the power of our mind. We underestimate the power of our energy. And how many of you are fairly new, like under 1 year entrepreneurs in here or investors? How many of you are newer in that space? Anybody? Couple people? How many of you less than 5? Several more? Okay. How many of you like 10 or under? Most of you 10 or more? Okay. So how many of you, those that are seasoned, or even if you're not, how many of you would agree that sometimes the hardest part about being an entrepreneur is your mindset? One day you can be winning, the next, it could happen in the span of an hour. It could happen in the span of an hour, in the span of 2 hours. You could be high as a kite, and that was one of the hardest things that it was for me early in my Mary Kay days, was like I'd book an appointment, and then that afternoon something would cancel. Or I'd get a great big sale, or I'd get a new team member, and that's just part of the scenario. But the more you can control your mindset, and the more you can control that energy, the more you can keep that a constant thing instead of feeling like you're on one of these financial or emotional roller coasters, okay? So one little tip I'll give you is take a tip from those 25 days, those 31 days of 25 gratitudes. Every morning, put out your gratitudes. Every morning, write those down. Send out love to the people that you're angry or irritated with or you don't like, because they can feel that energy. If you're really irritated and mad at them, they're going to feel that too. That actually recently happened with my ex-husband. I was really pissed at him with some stuff going on with our son. And I was sending out that negative stuff. And I was at my mom's at one particular weekend. And I said, okay, I got to chill, Lynette, just send out some love, send out some love. The next day he called me. Everything got handled. Yes, that was a win, okay? So where I'm going with this is look at where you spend your time, work hard. I'm not about not working hard and having a really solid work ethic. But what if you could invest 10 or 15 minutes or maybe 30 minutes in the morning and think about where you want your day to go? And write down your gratitudes. Because we get busy going, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. Well, you're just creating your own busy because you keep telling yourself that all the time. You ever notice how everybody gets insane after Thanksgiving? Leading up to Christmas? Things are so crazy. No, you just made them crazy. It's your choice how you choose to spend Christmas. It's your choice how you choose to do all of that. And I think I've noticed over the years that with women, as a mom, don't tell me that I can't have time off of my, that I don't have time off for my kids, whether it's for a thing at school or whether it's for their health. Don't tell me, you don't tell moms that they can't be with their kids, right, ladies? You don't tell us that. That's how we are wired. We would probably rather take more time off to have with our kids than we were to be able to have more revenue, because that's just how we are. And I have noticed that also, guys, it's in your DNA, you're hardwired to provide. Am I right? You're there to provide for your family. And I've worked with clients who are all about their businesses growing, they're working hard, they gotta work 50, they gotta work 60, gotta work 80 hours a week. And Terrell and I were talking about this earlier. I get that when you're brand new. There is a time and space to be able to work hard when you're brand new. But there also has to come a time and space where you have to end that and choose to delegate that out or cut it off or do something. Because if you keep working 60, 70, 80 hours a week for your family, pretty soon you're not gonna have a family. Because you're not spending any time with them. They want you. How many couples do we have in here that are doing things together as a business? That's something that somebody asked me about. And I think the other thing that we do as entrepreneurs is we get really, and just in general, as people working, we get busy taking our kids to this activity, going to that activity. We're busy and somehow providing, but we underestimate the power of our influence on them. Do you want your kids to be more like you, or maybe those other teachers or the other people that influence their life? They learn those skill sets, yeah, exactly, from you, right? One of the things that really motivated me that way were my Mary Kay mentors. Their kids were involved in their business. And those kids grew up to also be very, very successful in that world. And I wanted to model that with my kids. So one quick story I'll share with you is my son. We went to, man, there's a dozen stories. Which one do I want to tell you? We once went to this restaurant because we lived in Kansas City, and he knew both his mom and dad worked at home. And we went to one of those country cafe breakfast places where the doors are swinging, in and out of the kitchen. And the servers are bringing us the food. And he's looking at these people going back and forth, and they're working and giving us their food. And he goes, and this is, he's about 5 or 6. He goes, but where do they sleep? Because he thought everybody worked from home. He didn't get the fact that mom and dad, that these people actually had other jobs and had other places that they wanted to go to. I always told the kids if they worked in the office, I would pay them, but they also had their chores and things they needed to do. So one time I told my son if he put labels on my product, if he would do some stuff in the office, that I would pay him. Well, I needed it done, and he really didn't want to do it. My daughter, who's 4 or 5, said, Mom, can I do that? I said, sure, Dad can show you while I go to my meeting. Then there was this really pregnant pause. And she said, and you're gonna pay me, White? She was making sure she was gonna get her money in the door. So let me move on here a little bit. After that credit card job turned into one that lasted 7 years. Which I recently left the beginning of this year. It served its purpose in time. I had some scenarios. I wanted to get my credit back up. I wanted to get some debt paid off. It served its purpose in time and introduced me to lots of amazing, wonderful people in Lincoln and Omaha through networking that I wouldn't have known otherwise. It also showed me something else. I also saw lots and lots of business people, busy professionals, whether they were real estate, mortgage, insurance, starting up their own business, a variety of businesses, and I saw them stressed, overwhelmed, exhausted, no work-life balance, and they're going, I quit my 9 to 5 for this? They didn't have that quality of life that they wanted to have. And I said, I know how to help people do that. And whether you, because I would imagine that most of you in here are either real estate investing full-time or else you're doing it in addition to some type of job or some other business. Is that a correct assumption? And I think one of the things that I know when I've talked to my clients that sell real estate, it's very easy to get into the urgent mode all the time. You know, this person's gonna call and I need to go show a house. I need to go do this. You get into urgent and almost puts you into a fear mode if you don't answer the phone all of the time. What does that do for your work-life balance? What does that do for you being able to be present with your family? And I'm not saying don't take a buyer, okay? I'm not saying that. But sometimes if they're calling at 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night, is it really that important? Yeah, if the house is on fire, yeah, that's another story. You know, we were talking earlier about, you know, if you've got insurance claims, you know, like all the hailstorms that happen, obviously you need to answer those calls. But there's a difference between working on the urgent and working on the important. And I find a lot of people work so much on the urgent and the to-do list that you're not focusing on the right things, which I call the IPAs or income producing activities. And I jokingly say, if you do your IPAs, then you can have an IPA. But no IPAs for you unless you do your income producing activities. It's a lot of focusing on doing the right things. And that's what I noticed when I started doing the full-time job was I saw these people who were struggling. They weren't making enough money. They were working too many hours. They were stressed out. They were feeling like they were guilty and weren't able to spend time with their kids. And it's actually possible to make the same amount of money working less hours. It's just how you choose to spend your time, whether you're willing to delegate, whether you're willing to eliminate your distractions. There's a new form of ADD. It's called your phone. It's creating ADD scenarios. And if you turned off a lot of that would probably change. And like I said, your kids really, really want to be in your world. And most importantly, what I want you to think about, and then I'll open this up for some questions, is when I looked at moving from credit card and moving into coaching, I always wanted to be a teacher. Remember, that's what I said I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher. That's what I loved the most about Mary Kay World was teaching and coaching people. And I want to bring our society and our country back to centering around families instead of feeling like we have to work so freaking hard. And you can have a successful business at the same time. When I was working as a secretary, I was doing it because I was really good at it. When I was working in Mary Kay, I was doing it because I thought I could make a lot of money. And I did make some really good money. And I loved the company and what it stood for, but I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. And then I found myself doing credit card processing because I needed the money. It was just where I was in life, right? So when I looked at doing coaching, I went, you know what? This is my last hurrah. This is my last thing that I will do because I'm not going to retire. I'll just fade into the sunset because when you retire, it's just because you hate your life and you want to get away from the job. Isn't that true? Most people who retire hate their jobs. They can't wait to retire because they hate the job they've been working for 40 years. Well, why not live your whole life? So here's my question to you. Think about what you are doing right now. What lights you up? What gets you excited? What would you do for free? Because there's a difference between making a living and making a life. And what is the life that you want to create? Are you creating your real estate investing and doing what you do in real estate so you can have a dream life of how you want to live with your family? Is it to give you the flexibility and freedom to pursue something that you're really good at that's a passion? I mean, I love cooking, but I wouldn't want to do a catering. I wouldn't want to have a restaurant, but I love to cook. But maybe you want to have your own business of other things that maybe you really love to do, but we've always been tied to the money and financially. Do you guys follow where I'm going? What lights you up? Because you know what I've learned since I stepped out into this place of coaching and going into a world that I knew my content. I knew I help people get more structure and balance and more and have a much more successful lives. But it's stepping into an unknown again, starting over again. But what I've noticed is going back to energy. Is when you really love what you do and you're working from that space and that energy and it lights you up, your phone starts ringing. Things start happening. All sorts of good things come to you because the energy and the frequency you're putting up because you love what you do. If you're getting up in the morning and you don't like, and you're dreading the fact that it's like you can't wait for Friday, you dread Sunday nights, you hate Monday mornings, you know, that I was really good at Mary Kay, but I didn't love it. I didn't like all the things I had to do with it. And people thought I was crazy after 25 years in all those cars. But it didn't light me up. So do what you love. Focus on having some work-life balance and prioritizing your family, because you know when you get your priorities in order for what your values are and what's important to you. I'm not passing my values or priorities over to you, but whatever's important to you, have those in order. And when you do that, all the rest of it happens. Because it's really easy to work from fear and work from have to. And what if you say, I get to? I get to do this, I get to do that, and have the joy of that. It's like someone flips a switch. It's like everything magically happens. Hard part is, you have to trust it. You have to trust that it's going to happen instead of making it happen. You have to hold your hand open and allow it to come to you. Because if I've got my hand clenched up like this, can I receive anything? It doesn't work, right? And it's hard to trust. It is hard for someone who says, I'm going to make it happen, to release control. Super hard. Anybody else resonate with that? Anybody else have trouble giving up control? It's not an easy thing to do. But I promise you, every little baby step that you take, the easier it is, and the easier it is. And pretty soon it's like, wow, I have this amazing, wonderful life, that I'm living the life I want to, but I'm doing it by my design, and I'm doing it by the way I want to, not by the way everybody else says I have to. Okay? Let me see if there's anything else I got. Oh, one other quick thing. One of the things that Ray and I were talking about was, setting goals. I think a lot of times we hear about setting goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, etc. But really, truly, your success is in the dailies. It's the consistent effort. Chase and I were in Dallas at a conference weekend before last. And one of the terms that they coined was non-refundable minutes. Every day that you have, there's how many thousands of minutes in a day, in a week. Non-refundable minutes. You manage your activities. You don't manage time. Time is a constant. You can't manage that. You can manage your activities. But non-refundable minutes. And it's really good to look at this vision and this goal of where you want to go. And that you need to do that because you're putting that positive energy and the visualization out there, right? That's how I got that darn mink coat. But you also have to think about the daily things that you need to do, because that's where your success lies. One more phone call. I'm in a challenge with my personal trainer. I don't like this heat. I don't like all this humidity, but I committed to her. I'm going to get up every morning as long as the temperature is not above 85 degrees. I'm going to go for my walk. I'm committed. I got to keep to it. And just one more day and one more day. I will get to my health goals if I do that. You will get to whatever your goals are by doing the dailies. And I don't think we talk about that enough. We talk about visions and dreams and where we're going, but you've got to match it up with the daily stuff, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop talking because I could probably keep rambling nonsensically. So I'm just going to open this up to any questions that any of you guys might have. And please ask me somebody ask me at least one question. No. Yes, sir. It's funny you say that. because I was working really hard to, so when '08 crashed, we lost our house and it went into foreclosure because we had compensated on the equity that it was in there because it was kept increasing in value, right? And we borrowed against it, you know how what happens there. And we also filed bankruptcy. So part of the reason I took that corporate job was to get things back in order. And I stayed longer than I wanted to because of the stuff that was happening. And I was working hard to get a down payment for my house, gonna buy a house. Well, through the divorce and through all that stuff, there was some IRS tax consequences. I thought I had all those lined up. I found one townhouse. He was doing a for sale by owner and it appraised $25,000 less and he didn't like that and so he backed out of the deal. Then I found another townhouse, I was gonna buy that. We weren't getting, this was during the middle of COVID, okay? This was in fall of 2020. Couldn't get the documentation that we needed from the IRS. Title company couldn't, nobody could get it. And finally the seller said, no, we're not gonna do this. And I went, fine. I'll just go rent a damn house because of where I just want to upgrade where I was living. Here's the ironic thing though. Yes, I will get into that. Here's the ironic thing. The duplex, townhouse, whatever you want to call it, it was a ranch style with a full basement. I walk into there and the floor plan was exactly as I had visualized that did not exist in those other two townhouses. I'm where I'm supposed to be. You just never know. Will I be doing that in the future? You damn betcha I'm going to. You betcha. Good question. Thank you. Yes, sir. No, some hacks. Yes, thank you. One of my hacks is, as soon as I get ready to check out at night, I write down what I need to get done the next morning. That way I can release my stuff and be present with my family. And when I get up the next morning, I'm already ready to execute and go and not spend an hour and a half thinking about what it was I was supposed to do. Ooh, that was an ooh. Isn't that good? How many of you try to keep everything in your head? I'll show you my planner later. I actually did create a planner. If you're trying to keep it in your head, here's a good example. I'm gonna make fun of one of my construction clients. He's a big dude, and he's trying to keep everything in his head with his bids and all of his jobs he's got going on. And I said, we're gonna just brain dump. I just want you to write down all the bids you got going and all the jobs you got going. Because he was dropping the ball. He was dropping the ball on shit. And you can't risk your reputation when you're dropping the ball, right? Can't do it. So I had him write down all those things. And then we're talking some more. And he goes, oh, hold on. He wrote down some more. Hold on. And he wrote down some more. If you're trying to keep everything in your head, you just can't. Andrea knows. She was trying to keep everything in her head, right? One, if you're trying to keep everything in your head, your brain is freaking tired by the end of the day and you can't think for squat. Your brain's tired. Secondly, it's like a clogged pipe. If your brain is full of all this stuff you're trying to remember, it's shutting down your subconscious, which is where your ideas come from, which is where solutions and also, like when you're hunting for glasses, you can't find them, pretty soon you go find them, right? Your subconscious found your glasses. It found that thing in your checkbook. So if you want to reduce your stress, write everything down. And then compartmentalize it and prioritize it. Don't just write a to-do list, because that's not much better. Because then you're just working off your to-do list, but I guarantee that most of those to-do lists are not income-producing activities. So that's a couple hacks. Yes, sir.
What happens if you forget where you wrote it down
at? No sticky notes, one freaking notebook. This is my Chaos to Boss planner, so little unselfish plug here. Write it down in one spot. A tablet, a notebook, a calendar, something. My kids know that this is my brain. Don't tell me to do something. Don't anybody tell me to do something without me writing it down. The only exception to that is I will be driving and go, hey Siri, and I'll put a reminder in my phone to do it. But you need to put everything in one spot because it's just not possible to keep track. Because then how much time are you wasting by going from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other, trying to find what it is? How much is your time worth? And the other thing about distractions, okay, now I'm getting on a roll here, hold on. The other thing about distractions is you allow yourself to get distracted. It takes you 15 to 20 minutes to go back and focus on the thing you just walked away from. So if I'm over here working on something, composing something, and I let the phone distract me over here, not only was it that time that phone took, but it takes me 20 minutes to go back here and remember and get back in the zone of where I was. Do you ever wonder why you're not getting stuff done during the day? You're allowing all those distractions. You answer the phone every time it rings instead of thinking, I can call them back in an hour when I'm done with this. How much is your time worth? Every time you allow yourself to be distracted, let the meter start running and see how much it's costing you. Okay? Any other thing you got questions as far as hacks? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yes, Josh. Just getting started? Being brand new. It's funny, Andrea and I have talked about that a little bit as far as the networking part. So first of all, on the mindset, gratitudes are think about gratitudes and wins. Because initially you could be a little bit of a roller coaster. So first of all, I'm going to set my gratitudes, but I'm also going to set up my expectations for the day and say, so how do I want this day to be like? How am I going to show up as a person? Am I going to show up with energy and confidence and project that? Or am I going to show up and like, oh man, I hope things work today. People can tell whether you're confident or whether you're not. So just go act like you're confident, okay? How do you start the morning? How do you want to show up? At the end of the day, I would write down my wins. Every little itty bitty win that you have. At the end of the day, write it down. And even if you need to, keep track of it during the day, because as you write those wins down, you could have the day end crappy, but if you go look at all those wins, you're going, well, yeah, I really did have a good day. But sometimes it's the way you end it that kind of affects your psyche at the end of the day, and then it makes it so you don't want to start the next morning. Follow me? So I would do it the gratitudes and how you want to show up in the morning. I would do your wins during the day. But then I would also have the gratitudes thing in my back pocket. And I actually learned this gratitude thing from my personal trainer. It actually was a few weeks ago. I was sitting in this parking lot at a meeting that I have on Mondays on the 1st and 3rd. And I was just having a crappy day. And I usually can work myself out of that. But it was one of those that it just was tough. So I wrote down 10 things I was grateful for, because usually I can write down 10 things I'm grateful for and it'll shift my energy. I wrote down 10. It didn't work. Wrote down another 10. Worked a little bit. I think I had to get to 40. But I finally shifted my energy. And it's important to do that every time. And as a newer entrepreneur, you may be doing that every hour. But the more you can keep your energy in that spot, the more it's going to help your success and your mindset, because it's really easy to get into imposter syndrome and beat yourself up and definitely compare everybody else's best to your worst. Social media is really easy for us to get into the compare game. And we always compare everybody else's best to our worst. So if you go and look at your wins, and maybe you don't have a lot of wins that day, but go back and say, okay, what happened last month or the month before that? What did I do in freaking high school? Oh yeah, I killed it. A lot of times we've had a lot of wins, but at the moment it doesn't feel that way. And you have to go back and remember and remind yourself to keep in that zone and to keep your mindset in the right place. Okay. What was your other question? I'm sorry, I forgot it. Yeah. I can't, here's a little statistic I'll give you. When I started that credit card job, the first 2 years I was out pounding doors. I was knocking doors and knocking doors and knocking doors to get clients. And I burned myself out. I was working my ass off and I burned myself out. And I joined a networking group here in Lincoln called CenterSphere. And I learned more about how to network and more about getting referrals. That next year, 60% of my business came from referrals and half of it was from networking. It's about developing relationships. It's going out and meeting people. But here's what you don't do. When you go to a networking meeting, you go and you focus on them and you focus on getting to know them and finding out about them and what they do, and the most interested you can be, and ask them boatloads of questions. First of all, everybody has a sign on the front of them that says, make me feel important, right? And what's in it for me? WIIFM. What's in it for me? If I'm focusing on them all of the time and getting to know them, et cetera, at some point in time, they're going to go, so tell me about you. How are they not going to? When you're asking all those questions, a couple of things happen. Either one, there's going to be a connection for the two of you to perhaps do business, or you know somebody who knows somebody, or they could help you. You never know. And I think sometimes we put too much focus and energy into how many people we can meet. To me, 1 or 2, 3 good quality meetings at a networking event is much more important than me going out and handing out 10 cards. Here's my card. 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 Oh, did you get my card? Here's my card. Here's my card. How does that feel to you? As opposed to cheesy, exactly. As opposed to going and getting to know someone and creating a connection and meeting them. I'm honestly, and I guess this is a perfect example of it, is this amazing couple sitting over here. They came to a coffee that I helped host for Centersphere. That was the first time I had met them. I knew their daughter. They told me that they came here tonight because they heard I was speaking. I must have done something right at that networking thing for them to come. You never know the ripple effect of what you're doing. How you do anything is how you do everything. And you never know who's watching, whether it's your kids or other people. And that goes back into the thing with the influence that we have with our kids. You never know what they're saying or what they're going to pick up from us. We have to be the highest standard possible for them. Because that's where, I mean, aren't we the ones who want to be the biggest influence on their lives? So we have to pay attention to what we're doing. And the more we involve them in our life and our business, they love it. They get the time with mom and dad that they want. And at the same time, we're raising up them to be the way we want them to be and not be raised by everybody else. So does that answer your networking question? Okay. Yes, sir. That's a good question. I encountered that in Mary Kay a lot. When Desert Storm happened, I wanted to kick almost every husband I met that month over to Desert Storm because they were so against their wives, and it was all preconceived ideas. So if you're in a business venture and your spouse is not supportive, the best thing you can do is lean on your coach and mentor for the ups and the downs and the support, because they know how to go and build the business. And share only the good stuff with your spouse. Don't come home and tell them the crap. Share only the good stuff with your spouse. When I started Mary Kay, I just come through the oil and gas crash and stuff in Denver, and they were like, my dad, who had been a Lincoln District fire chief for almost 40 years, said, oh, Lynette, why don't you just quit being a dreamer and get a real job? My mom's going, oh, honey, you know, are you sure you want to do that? You just came through a really tough time. And I talked to my grandparents about getting a loan from inventory, and my grandfather, who's the wheat farmer, you know, he says, well, do you think you can ever make enough, you can't ever sell enough lipstick to be able to earn a car or anything like that? I didn't pay any attention to them. They were like that spouse, you know, they were my family. And I just went out and proved it to them and showed it to them. And pretty soon they're like, I won my first company car. My grandfather took my high school graduation picture, which was easily 10 or 15 years later. He took my high school graduation picture, took the PR notice that I had sent him and grandma just for the heck of it, and put it in my local newspaper. So sometimes I think you really just have to stay true on what you want, but also expose them to anything that you can as far as an event, you know, whether it's something like this or anything else. I took my fiance with me down to Dallas when Chase and I went down there, because He just thinks a whole lot differently than I do. I think a lot bigger, but we needed to be on the same page as a couple because we'd been through some tough times because we weren't. So I took him to that event. He came back a different person than he went down. So anytime you can expose people to bigger events, and it wasn't a network marketing one, it was just it was a general one. But also, I think just sometimes you have to look them, put their face in your hands and say, just give me 6 months, just trust me. There's different ways to just get them, ask them to trust you and or let them hear all the successes and the good things that are going on, and then share the tough times with the coach or the mentor.
So how do you tell your clients to do the same? I mean, that's a hurdle I have multiple times with clients like coach and mentor,
Yeah,
that unsupported spouse, and sometimes it derails them from what they want to do.
that's pretty much what I would tell my team, my consultants, and tell my team. Share, come to me with all your problems, your issues, your challenges, and tell your spouse all the good stuff. Because when you have those down, challenging days, or they're not supportive, it's one, because that's usually opposites attract. They don't have that same line of thinking. They're nervous, they're scared. They're probably being more, in your industry, probably more conservative. And they're probably a little bit scared. So some of it is just, let them know all the good stuff, all the celebrations, help reassure them in any way that you can. But sometimes you just have to, but they have to just say, hey, just trust me, or give me a certain amount of time and agree on it, and then negotiate it from there. Because if they know that maybe there's a finite timeline, I've noticed that would help them quite a little bit. But just the way I'm saying that to you guys, that's why I would tell my clients to talk to their family. Anybody else any questions?
Yeah, I want to know how you started your coaching.
How did I start my coaching job? Well, first of all, the wrong way in the beginning, because I just said, you know what, I want to go out and I want to start coaching. And I knew what I could do or I could tell people. And so I just told them I was going to start coaching. No one paid any attention. And the corporate job was so difficult and so demanding. I just had to pay attention to that. So when COVID happened, that was like a blessing, because I couldn't go out and talk to these businesses and merchants and stuff and credit cards. So I said, I know all this stuff in my head. I have all this content. I have all these things I can teach people. A lot of it is the time and productivity is just the basic of it. It's chaos to boss, because you have to get the chaos out of your life before you can even go any farther, right? So that was the foundational piece. But I honestly just, I hired a coach and said, how do I put this together? I hired a coach who taught me how to do the research, how to find the right marketing message, how to start putting it out there. And a lot of it was I just started going out and networking again. Only I just did it under a different hat of what I was doing. And I knew the marketing messages and the pain points that people were experiencing. And so I started talking about that. And I'd go speak at an event like this, and people would come to me afterwards and say, hey, I spoke at 2 Centersphere events, not more than 25 or 30 people last week, 2 separate events. And I have one client and somebody I'm meeting with on Wednesday that wants to talk to me. So my next adventure is learning how to take all of that online, because to me, social media is like a whole new animal that I'm learning. That's the hardest part. So I'm getting clients through networking and one-to-one while I'm in the process of growing my social media presence and growing my business online. So that's pretty much how I started. But I think a lot of it also was, I just get so passionate and empowered about communicating to people about having families win and having businesses win. And I will, if I could do this for free to help families be able to do that, I would, because I just think it's that important and so much to get our society and our world back to centered around families and kids, and because the kids deserve that. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I have one quick question, favor. Because it's always my mission when I do something like this. Like I said, I never know what I'm gonna say or how it's gonna get delivered, but I want someone to have a takeaway or a nugget. Did anybody get a nugget or a takeaway? Yes, awesome. Mission accomplished. Thank you so much for having me.